Hi, welcome to the Leadership with Sonia podcast. Everything leadership, life and learning, plus outstanding interviews with great leaders and humans across the globe. Let's get listening and learning.
Welcome leaders and welcome to today's Leadership Lounge with the incredible Paul Scurrah, and he's definitely one of my favourite leaders. I definitely have my favourites, and he's one of them. A mastermind. I've got a bio around him because he's exceptional in terms of his experience. A mastermind with over 25 years of experience in transport, logistics, travel and aviation. Paul was appointed as the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Pacific National in 2021. But that's just the tip of the iceberg for this outstanding leader. Before his Pacific National adventure, Paul was the CEO of Virgin Australia in 2019 and DP World in 2013. Prior to this, he was the Chief Marketing and Commercial Officer at Horizon and the CEO of Queensland Rail. Paul has truly conquered the world of leadership, but he is not one to limit himself to just one boardroom. He's a man of many talents and passions. He was part of the board of the Gold Coast Suns AFL team, showcasing his love for sports. And if that isn't enough, he is also the chairman of Wiz Technologies and the non-executive director of RPM Global, proving that his influence stretches far and wide. He is also a keynote speaker at the Outstanding Leadership Awards in 2024 and one of our incredible judges. So welcome to the Leadership Lounge today.
Hi, Sonia. How are you? You going well?
I'm going really well out there trying to change. Well, I am changing the face of leadership around the globe, trying to build more great leaders and leadership. How about you?
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations on the ongoing journey there, because we still have actually a long way to go to create the type of leaders across all spheres of business that people would aspire to have. And it's not a journey that's an easy one. So congratulations. I'm going well. I'm busy as always, but going very well, and really pleased to be able to talk about this topic with you. We're both very passionate about it.
Yes, I know you are as well. Victor's saying good to see us. So that's good. Thank you, Victor. He's a great leader as well that he's watching. I think it's really important that we have role models. So at the moment I'm on and that's, I think, the reason behind the Leadership Awards is the vision around the Leadership Awards was and still is about showcasing, acknowledging and recognizing great leaders and role models, because I think our generations of today and tomorrow need great role models because we do what we see. So having role models like yourself, talking with me today and being involved in the Leadership Awards and also around the fact you're so committed to great leadership is that we just need to have that ripple effect and to also let people know that leadership isn't a role or title. It's an attitude and it's a choice and an action that we can all step up and lead, because imagine if we had more great leaders and great humans as well, because great leaders make great humans and great humans make great leaders. So I love that you're really committed to this as well.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It's leadership is something that, as I said a bit earlier, is still a long way to go, but it is being acknowledged now that it has a lot more impact on people's lives than I think has ever been acknowledged in the past. And so that's a heavy responsibility for leaders. And I think once you know that, it does give you a bit of perspective as to how important the role is of leadership, no matter whether you've got a team of 5 or a team of 10,000. It's incredibly important. You're impacting lives.
You are impacting lives. And, it's very true what you're saying, because in terms of, even the work we do and the conversations we have, the impact of a not so great leader or a bad leader on you it can be debilitating. So, and also when you work with great leaders, and we've all worked with great leaders and we've all worked with not so great leaders, but when you work with great leaders, they're gold, and you can learn leadership. You can learn it. So So I would love to know, like, looking back on your life, because I know you're really passionate about this. In terms of events or experiences or people that have made a difference, how or who or what has made a difference to where you are today?
In terms of events, Sonia, there's three that really stand out for me in my career, and you can consider it lucky or unlucky. I don't know how to look at it, but well, actually, I do. I think it's more, I develop more out of these events than otherwise. One was being a senior manager at Ansett when it collapsed back in 2001, and just the experience of having to go through that sort of trauma and the uncertainty, seeing the impact on what I perceived then to be a lack of communication on all of the people. There was 15,000 people. So that event certainly shaped my perspective around how impactful leadership and communication can be. It also, it felt like a bit of a 6-month MBA, very concentrated, because I was exposed in trying to recover Ansett to some very entrepreneurial investors, to the union movement at an intense level, and to what was a very volatile industry in aviation. So I learnt a lot through then. Fast forward a bit later in my career, when I was CEO of Queensland Rail, the events of managing that company through the 2011 floods, and remembering we had 8,000 kilometres of track across the entire country, and at one point in time 4,000 kilometres was underwater, which for context is like having the whole of France and Germany underwater. Was a major learning experience and a major challenge. Recovering from that was also a major challenge. So that was an event that I think defined me as to who I am today. And then, of course, the more public one was I'd been made CEO of Virgin Australia in 2019, and then COVID hit in January, February of 2020. The biggest black swan event the airline industry has ever seen, and having to continually pivot around what success looks like on a daily basis during that process, ultimately coming through, going through a sale process and saving Virgin Australia was a massive learning experience, but also took its toll in terms of the stress and mental strain as something like that would. Experiences, life experiences, grew up with in a working class background with not the easiest upbringing. So you learn to survive on your own a little bit in those circumstances. I'm a big fan of David Morgan, the ex-CEO of Westpac and a very successful Australian businessman, that he says one of the best gifts you can be given as a teenager is adversity, and learning to deal with that actually really steels you up for the future. So that upbringing and the challenges around my upbringing certainly made me very determined to make something of my life, and some of those lessons were through making mistakes, for example. But I was also extremely fortunate to be involved in professional sport, and that, I think, and it was AFL. I was on Richmond's list for a 3-year period, and AFL, like a lot of sports, great leveler. So it didn't matter where you came from, what your background was, everyone was treated very equally because of what you brought as a person and as a teammate and as as an athlete. And it teaches you a lot about learning how to define success and how to measure the defining of that success, how to set the goals, how to be disciplined, how to execute, the importance of teamwork. All of those things are massive, massive life skills. And leadership is really, really important in sport. And so there's lots of great lessons in that. People, my mum was a very hard worker to make sure I could at least complete school. So that was very important. I had an uncle and auntie who had their own small business that they made a success of, that I watched and learned, and they employed me for a little while to see, when it's your own skin in the game, everything matters. Every cent matters. The way your customers think of you matter. Sometimes when you get into bigger companies, you forget that. I had lots of great football coaches, like I was saying before. I learned lessons from them. In the business world, my singular idol has always been James Strong. because at Qantas, he stood out for so many reasons, but he created clarity of purpose. But he made everybody feel special and important, and he made everyone feel like they could contribute. And that's the thing that's never left me since working for him. Also, I mentioned David Morgan already. Richard Branson, the adversity he overcame with dyslexia, and Anna Bligh as well, the ex-Premier of Queensland, and the communication style she took through the Queensland floods is a great lesson for anyone who wants to know how to communicate, particularly in times of crisis.
Wow. Okay. Wonderful experiences. Because I remember with Ansett, Ansett used to own Hayman Island, and I was working on Hayman Island when all that happened. And I remember being on a massive construction site near Ipswich, running a leadership program when the floods happened, and the whole project site was underwater. And yeah, just listening to, the life tends to give you roles that you need to steer crises. It sounds like the universe is like, yeah, Paul can handle this. We'll give him this. Yeah.
Well, everyone says that, there's a purpose or a reason for wherever you turn up in life. So one day I might find out what that actually is and why.
In terms of, all the things that you've gone through, and I love the fact that you mentioned about being a teenager, because I think owning your life story and looking back on those times, and those times where you can find those times where you've looked back and you found that inner courage or inner leadership. In terms like you mentioned about, with COVID and the floods and Ansett, I always say to people, it's very easy to lead when you're steering a ship, right, when the seas are smooth, but true leadership comes out when the seas are rough, right? What do you think contributed to you being able to navigate the ship when it was the rough seas? What do you think were some of those skills or competencies or things that really served you during those times?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The simple answer to it, I think, Sonia, is being prepared for anything. And pardon me. And no one can really prepare for a black swan event, but taking on challenges or unexpected challenges should be something you sort of plan to know how you're going to approach it and how you're going to react. And in all of those instances, I had wonderful leadership teams at the companies I was running, and we were already very clear about what was super important to us, what our purpose was, what our vision was, what our priority pillars that are everybody's job, and our values and behaviours. And they came to the fore. I think when a crisis comes, it strips everything bare and it actually reveals the real culture of that company. And so preparing for culture change in a great business that actually has the sort of focus on the things that matter already, it makes it far easier to go into a crisis. So, for example, I'll give you an example of that. When we say at Pacific National right now, deliver for our people, customers and shareholders, and I apply that back to the floods at Queensland Rail, we had 70 staff who lived in the Ipswich area who all they got everything flooded. And we had lots of heavy lifting equipment, and we had a lot of engineers and tradies in our business. So when they weren't able to be deployed to help fix or go into flooded areas until the waters had receded, we deployed them to go and reconnect water and reconnect electricity at our employees' houses. So that's how you say, if we're true to our values and we truly want to prove that we care more, that's an easy decision to make. When we say safety is above all else, then in everyday life, then that is even more important through a crisis. So nothing we do here is ever going to compromise in this crisis management that we're going to compromise safety. So communication, we're going to communicate broadly. And I think the big lesson between the Ansett collapse and what I had to take the Virgin group through was, I still remember very vividly, no emails, there were mobile phones, but no texting, certainly no Zoom or Teams or anything like that. waiting to hear by sitting on my front porch, waiting for the postie to come, and he'd ride by and keep going without putting anything. And I go, oh, now it's another 24 hours to wonder what the hell's going on. And so we actually did 5 to 10 sometimes live video updates a day to all of the people within the Virgin Group, just to say, even when we had nothing to say, that we've got nothing to say, but we're going to come back on in another hour and tell you what else we know. So people weren't left guessing. So all of that is super important. So to get the courage to do that is really about preparation. And what a crisis does, though, is really successful businesses have defined what success looks like. And you have a roadmap to that success. In a crisis, you've got to bring in the time frame of that and redefine that success. Okay, we know in normal circumstances we're headed up to the lighthouse on the hill, but right now we've just got to get to the top of these stairs. You know, that is what success looks like right now. And so you break it down, and we break it down week by week, day by day, hour by hour throughout that crisis. So it's very important to prepare for those sorts of things in your day-to-day running of a company. And when the crisis comes, you're far better prepared.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love the fact, I mean, that you just communicated even though you had nothing to say, because it's very easy for us to ruminate if we don't know what's going on. So that over communication is key. And actually, I forgot who said it. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's very easy to make decisions when you know what your values are. Yes. And values a lot, like knowing your values is key, and principles are key as a leader. So yeah, thank you for that. That's excellent. I'm sure everyone got a lot out of that. So you know that I'm championing, and we're championing a world of more courage and kindness. And I know kindness is also one of your values at Pacific National. And what does that mean to you? I mean, why is that important, do you think, today in particular?
Yeah, really, really important today. It's just, for me, it's really about being a decent human. Yeah. That is, a respectful human. You know, I don't really like, I certainly don't like people putting me on a pedestal because I happen to be someone with a CEO title. It makes me feel uncomfortable. We're all people. We all have lives outside of work. We all should be equal. I just have a little bit more authority, but it doesn't make me a more important person. And kindness is about being a decent human being, first and foremost. In a business sense, it is a really, really useful tool. But there is a big difference between kindness and softness. It is not about being soft. This is about knowing that your responsibility to run a company or run a division or run a team is to get the very best out of that team. And to get the very best out of that team, you're going to have to make sure you reinforce them when they do the right thing, and you actually address when they do the wrong thing. Both of those things can be done with kindness. No matter what the discussion is, you can do it with kindness. And even if you're letting someone go, as hard as that is, does not mean it can't be done with empathy, and it can't be done with compassion. You can't control the reaction that comes your way, but if you're true to your morals, you're true to your kindness value, you will deliver it with kindness. And there is an element where we have had in the safety critical businesses I've run, people who are much loved by us, who just can't operate safely, and they put themselves and others in danger. So the kindness is also about everyone. In dealing with one issue, it's about how you're kind to everyone else. I'm kind enough to make sure that we take out any risk to lives through this, as hard as it is for that one individual. And even then, you're kind enough to say, you know, we think you belong somewhere else, and that feedback actually should be seen, and it's hard to deliver at the time, but seen as being helpful and caring and kind.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing a real shift in kindness being the new style of leadership, empathy being the new style of leadership. And, you know, quoting Brené Brown, she says, to be unclear is to be unkind, and to be clear is to be kind. So kindness isn't a softness. You can still be kind. And I agree, it's about being a great human. And I shared a story on LinkedIn this week because I had to fly to Melbourne on Sunday, and I was going putting my bag through security, and the guy obviously he puts your bags in and I never get it right, but he always puts the bags in the buckets and all the trays, and I said, oh hi, how are you today? And how are you feeling? Gee, it's pretty busy in the airport today, and thank you so much for today. And he looked at me and he went, I've been here for 6 days straight and not one person has asked me how I'm going or acknowledged me. And I looked at him and I was like, I'm sorry about that. That must be really tough for you. But how is your day going? He goes, I'm having a great day. Thank you so much for asking. And I thought, have we lost the ability to be kind and connect with people? Or, that's such a free and easy thing to do. And why aren't we seeing people and acknowledging them or showing gratitude? Because I thought to myself, he's helping me serve my mission by I can fly because of his work. And so therefore I can go and build more great leaders. So he's contributing to helping me run my business and do what my purpose is. And I thought we should be thanking people for that. And anyway, it's a very easy thing to do, everyone. And I can tell you now, it's a ripple effect. It's a real ripple effect. And also it's great for chemicals. It's a dopamine exchange. So
entirely.
So, okay. So leadership, why does it matter to you? And how does it play an important part in your life? Because I know one thing I say a lot to people that I work with, if I had a time machine, I wish I could go back and say to my younger self, can you please start reading this or investing in leadership, self-development early on? I mean, why does it matter to you? What part does it play in your life?
So two parts to that. First of all, it's my job to be a leader, and I take that incredibly seriously. And I say that it sounds very simple, but as a CEO, I don't see myself as a subject matter expert. I employ people who are really technical, and the job is to lead them into an environment where they can thrive and get the best out of them and actually show their skills and be their best. So that's why it matters. It has been my job. I've been a CEO on and off mostly for the last 18 years, maybe longer. And it does matter a lot. And the second part of that is I know I was very susceptible to whatever outcomes I drove being driven by the type of leader I had. And so if I had a great leader who inspired me, I'd thrive. And if I didn't, I wasn't the type of person that would go very well in a fear-based culture, or one that was devoid of caring, kindness, connectedness. So that's why it matters to me, is I want to make sure that anyone that works for me doesn't experience what I didn't like about bad leadership. And so I've continually modeled myself on a combination of who I want to be like and who I don't want to be like, and making sure it's deliberate both ways. And so leadership matters a lot to that. Now, post-COVID, there's a bit of a mindset shift, and I think it's even more important. And enticing people back to the workforce has been a bit of a challenge, to the workplace, I should say, has been a bit of a challenge. And so I want them to come in because of the environment they're walking into, and willingly wanting to get out of bed and come in, not work from home. So leadership matters a lot. And I don't think it has been good leadership has actually been rewarded enough in the business world. I think the leadership focus needs to be intensified. I think boards, CEOs need to pay a lot more attention on how they measure and develop their leaders. Too often I see boards and CEOs being managed up, and because that works and they see one version of a person, they promote them, when the rest of the company's sitting there saying, like, if it was me doing it, what does Paul not see that we're all seeing? Does he not really know what's going on? So I think there's got to be a lot more depth of assessment of what really excellent leadership looks like and how you promote it through the organisation.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think it is fundamental. And unfortunately, when we go through tough times, we tend to put leadership to the side, and it's actually it's critical, it's pivotal that companies are investing in this, and also what great leadership looks like for them, and building that capability. But obviously also people are investing their own self-development is key. But in terms of my compass, I agree with what you're saying, that I always go, the two things I always say to myself is, who do I want to be, and what do I want to stand for? And that's my compass. So yes. Because I've got a few comments here. Someone's just said kindness is the new formula to provide outstanding results, which is great.
With that. Yes, I agree with that. The other challenge for any leader right now too is, I think, not just at CEO level, but I think at every level of leadership, there is a far greater expectation to be, I'm not going to say perfect, but to be squeaky clean. And in the past, you could get by being an effective leader by having two strong muscles and a few weaker muscles around it. And there's an expectation now that every one of those muscles is strong, and you've got to strengthen those that you may not be strong in. And by way of example, community expectations, the rapidly emerging importance of inclusion and diversity. It's far more than a compliance or rhetoric thing. It's very important. So you've got to develop a strength in that side. You've got to develop a strength, obviously, in the ESG side now, because there is more and more and more onus and expectations coming on us to run companies that are not just successful financially, but they are doing the right thing by the community, society, the environment. That's becoming more and more onerous on us. So there's a lot more expectations on leaders now to have a broader suite of muscles around them. But the strength there is making sure, or the trick is making sure that you fill those gaps with really good, competent leadership below you, and expect them to thrive.
Yeah, it is absolutely about others, and that you're there to help them and inspire them to be more and do more, right? As in helping them, with their muscles, build their muscles, and surrounding yourself with diversity and people that do have different strengths to you, and letting them thrive, I think is key. Are you facing any, next question is, are you facing any leadership challenges at the moment? And if you are, how are you overcoming them?
Well, there's always leadership challenges. You've never nailed the job. And there's sometimes, if you're ever having a down day with leadership, it just feels like people keep bringing you problems. Someone said to me the other day, life is full of problems. There's good problems and bad problems. So put it into perspective. Having a good job in a great company where people bring me problems is a good problem. So a bad problem would be, I am now no longer in a position where people are bringing me work problems to solve. So the perspective is there, and you're always facing challenges. And like any time I've ever run a company, you have your external challenges and your internal challenges. So external challenges are always the macro issues, like how's the market going? How's your competition going? Is the government, helping or hindering the progress of your company? What are the public expectations of you? What role do you play in community? And then you've got your internal challenges about making sure that your workforce, and my particular circumstance now, we've got an aging workforce that's very male dominated. How do we transition that into a much more inclusive and diverse workforce? How do we make sure that we have a generational change where the newer skills and newer learnings are coming through? That's an internal challenge. How do we glue the entire organisation together, agreeing on a sole purpose, a sole direction to head in? How do we make sure that the culture is the type of place where what we expect them to do is done when no one's watching? Those internal challenges are there now for me right now. So I think the things that keep me awake at the moment, running a railroad, it's always, are we safe? Are we keeping our people safe? Do not leave any stone unturned. That's an omnipresent challenge. That was also an omnipresent challenge as the CEO of an airline as well. That's just that one thing that is unforgiving, and you need to be relentless on that focus. So another challenge, as I mentioned before, is what do you do? How have things changed post-COVID? And how do we adapt to that? And so Teams and Zoom rapidly evolved through necessity, through COVID, and they have really changed the business landscape. But how do you make that work for you. And I don't think anyone's got that really right yet. What is the balance? How do you get the productivity up with a balance of flexibility, saying we need you in the office sometimes, but you can do your job at home as well. We are results driven. How do you find that balance? That's a challenge right now too. And the everlasting challenge for a CEO is, how do you juggle or balance the needs of all of the directions you get pulled into by your shareholders, by your people, by your customers, and by the community. And that's a challenge that will never leave a CEO. And once you find the balance, it's actually a nice sweet spot to be in, but it's a really hard job to get there.
Excellent. I promise everyone that's listening, being a CEO is really wonderful. It's even despite all the different challenges.
I love it.
Yeah, I know you love it. Yeah,
I love it. But to be honest, every job, not just every job has challenges, and it is. But that's why there's a job. It's because there's a challenge to be tackled or a problem to be solved. And the worst thing for anyone would be that need for that solving of the problem goes away, and then our livelihoods get affected.
Yeah. Do you ever find, like, I'm seeing a bit of a challenge at the moment in all the conversations and programs that we're having and delivering at the moment? There seems to be the ability to be adaptable, and that not that change, or we know that change is constant, but it seems now change is just constant, and that there's this kind of, and I agree with what you're saying around the macro, I know what you're saying around that, but I'm just saying what I wanted to ask was, there seems to be this burnout, this kind of, like, people at the moment I'm getting this real sense of people are coming to conversations or our programs, and they're like, I'm so busy, I'm feeling burnt out, and I'm finding it challenging keeping up with all the change that's going on at a macro level. It's that kind of, do you ever find that? I mean, do you ever find that there's days or there's times you go, I've really got to watch my energy, my my own well-being? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I really have to work at, because if you walk into a meeting and the leader of the company is lacking energy, it flows through the organisation. Pardon me. And sometimes through some of the challenges I've been through over the last few years, it has been really energy sapping. And so, but there's a couple of reasons for that, I think, that are really, they're not recent in terms of the past 2 years, but ever since the evolution of technology that allows you to be contacted anywhere, or allows you to be interrupted anywhere as well, I think we have allowed ourselves to remove the bookends from the day. And so, and I think that allows us to, so there's a blurring between home and work life at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. And so I try to set an example to my team that says, up until about this time of the day, I'm not going to switch it on unless it's an emergency or life-threatening or something like that. I'm going to be fully on from this point to this point, and I'll be available after it, but I'm not going to blur too much either way. And being very deliberate about that, and you have to be much more deliberate in terms of locking time in your diary to do anything other than work.
Yeah.
And be really disciplined about it. So in the early days, you would be uninterruptible in meetings. You'd have someone in a potentially in a PA role that would be gatekeeping your phone and your phone calls and your meetings, and you'd be able to focus. And now with iPads in meetings, or iPhones and watches, we are getting bombarded, and it actually isn't good for your mental health. So switching off the notifications when you're trying to focus on work is a massive, massive thing to do. And I highly recommend it, because otherwise you get too distracted, you get overstimulated, and you lose the ability to focus on what really matters. And I think that hurts our mental health, and it drives burnout, to your original point.
Yeah, I love the analogy. Did you say bookends?
Yes, bookend your day. So in the past, 9 to 5, whatever, pick whatever hours you want. But people worked at 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I found since I became more disciplined, and it's difficult to do it all the time, clearly in a CEO role. But the more disciplined I've got, the more focused I remain in that window, which actually means I'm doing more in that window than I used to do spread out when I let it blur. And you're sort of keeping nobody happy because you're not present when you're at home. You're half present when you're at work. And so everyone wins. And you actually become more focused and productive. And you're more definite about what you need to achieve on that day. And you actually learn to at least counteract the distractions that might take you off course.
It is so, yeah, I think it's actually so important. One of my favorite authors is Ryan Holiday, and I read his book. He's got several books, but I read his book a few months ago around Discipline is the Destiny, around some of our...
I'm reading it right now. I'm up to the Lou Gehrig. Yes, so it's really good.
It is a really good book. Courage is Calling is a really good book as well. I also love the work from James Clear on atomic habits as well, around, because your habits are built from your character. So setting that discipline and habits is really important.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So you have to tell me what you think of the book. It's a great book. Yeah, it's really good, actually. So what do you think? What skills do you think leaders need today for tomorrow?
So humility is very, very important.
Yeah.
Being elevated into a position of authority is not an instant reason to become someone who thinks they're more important. Right? So humility is important. But on top of that, I think we shouldn't overcomplicate leadership either. So I think the ability to formulate and then communicate a plan and stick to that plan is really important, a very, very important part of leadership. But what I would say is, in formulating your plan, don't make it a tablet from above, the world according to Paul. I think in doing so, you need to take advice from all the different areas. Say, listen, here's where I directionally want to take the company or my division or my team. Here's where I directionally want to take it. How do you see that playing out as a part of the team? What do you think is working? It's not working. How would you describe the path forward? Put all that in the bucket, and then what you end up with is something that hits the mark a lot more, because you've listened, you've taken into account feedback and contributions, and then when you present it, the team actually feels like they own it as well. And so it's very important, and it's effective both ways. You've formulated a more rounded plan because you've listened, and you've got more ownership when it's being delivered. So those things are very, very important. So an agreed purpose, clarity of vision, making sure that there's a regular feedback loop, and it's okay to give feedback, and it's okay to look out for each other, and it's okay to challenge each other in a team is healthy. That's all good. Importantly, having really defined expectations, not just about the purpose and the direction of the company, but about the how. How are we going to turn up and behave here, and how will we know when we've succeeded? So one of the worst things ever is when you walk into a company and their values are plastered up on a poster, and then you see the CEO doing the exact opposite. And the CEO saying, all of you have to do this, but I'm more important. I'm above it. It just kills it. Yeah. And nobody buys in. So if you do that, if you're communicating a plan, you formulated it, you've included people in it, you're clear on where you're headed, you're clear on what's important, and you're clear on how, the most important thing is live and breathe it every day. Be the example of it. And that example is important. And particularly when one of the most worn out phrases in leadership is lead by example. Yeah. It's only good if it's the right example. Yeah. Because if you're telling people the way to get ahead is to leave them waiting for an hour because I'm more important than you, even though the diary said 11 a.m. If I tell you just shut up and do as you're told, if I yell and scream and threaten you with the sack if you don't get a performance, and the people below you see that the boss is there and that's how he behaves, how do you think they're likely to behave when they get up there?
Yeah.
And who's likely to get up there anyway is people that say, oh, I'll just get there by keeping this person happy, not really being true to myself.
It's yeah, I love that. The humility, I think, is absolutely key. I think that if you can lead the company if you've got company values and you can see that the CEO is leading the values, lead the values. Like everyone should be, if you want to be, if you want to really make a difference, absolutely understand what those values mean and lead them. But you have to, I think it's that authentic leadership, right? You have to understand who you are as a leader and be truly authentic. And someone's just asked about the book name. It's called Discipline is the Destiny by Ryan Holiday, but I can put that in the comments a bit later and some other recommendations as well. So yeah, I absolutely agree. It's something that we get asked a lot. I'm really passionate about the future generations and their leadership. I see them as being real crusaders, and around those Generation Z and the millennials and the other generation, I think it's called Alpha, is coming through as well. Yeah. And, I love, everyone kind of says to me, oh, they're just so difficult to manage or lead and they're lazy. And I go, okay, I said, I must be seeing it through a different lens, because I actually think that if we can lead by example, and I agree, being the right example for them, they're going to really help change the world. And we have to prepare them for that, because I see them as being, they're going to be some great leaders coming through. So we need to help them be great. So,
I agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, who or what defines a great leader to you?
Who or what? Well, the what is pretty much the summary of everything I've talked about here. Is a great leader is someone that inspires. So, and inspires all walks of life. So, talking about the new generation coming through, we just have to pay attention to what inspires them, and then you'll get the outcomes you want. Someone that creates a really clear picture of success and the roadmap to success, and is leading from the front, and people willingly follow. So, and I often ask my team, if all else fails about all of the leadership development we're doing, think about who was your best boss that you'd crawl across hot coals for, that you'd willingly jump out of bed 3 hours early for, and just do what they did. And generally, I've never heard anyone say my favourite boss was someone that used to belittle me, bully me, nitpick everything I did. Everyone's favourite boss is in line with that description of a leader. They believed in me, they backed me, they were honest with me in a kind way. So just replicate that. So that's what a great leader is. Be a good human, be approachable. Sometimes in some of the jobs that I've had, been pretty public facing, if you one time turn someone away and someone sees you being rude to them, that sticks to your reputation. People see that. Yep. So be on and be positive. So great leaders, and who I mentioned it early, James Strong is a great leader. So I think there's many others who I've learnt from along the way, like Screw Turner from Flight Centre. What I learned from Screw is the importance of specificity on KPIs all the way from the very front line all the way to the top, and breaking things down into small bite-sized chunks and eating the elephant one bite at a time. So there's been some great people I've worked with.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Definitely around being a good human, being approachable, and I think is really important. And you can't be approachable if you're constantly leading from your computer or your phone and not actually going out there and connecting with people and being curious and building connections and trust and relationships. But also, thinking about those great leaders or those great managers or people that you worked with and what made them great, or even great role models, and just thinking around what made them great and what resonates to you, and just demonstrating that is just gold, right? So, okay, I know we've only got a little bit of time to go, and I know I I could ask you so many more questions, but I've only just got a couple more. What advice would you give leaders listening to this interview? Like, what advice would you give them?
I would, the best piece of advice is pay a lot more attention to the true impact you're having on your team.
Okay.
And be prepared to accept whatever you learn.
Yeah.
I don't think if you're a poor leader, I don't think ignoring the true impact and hoping it doesn't really come up or just sweeping it under the carpet is never going to make you a better leader. I'm extremely grateful to previous leaders who gave me a straightening up when I was younger. As uncomfortable as it was at the time, I look back and think, wow, that person actually cared enough about me to give me some feedback to develop me into a better person and a better leader. Mm-hmm. So I would pay a lot more attention to the true impact of your leadership. Find a way to get some official, whether it's a survey, whether it's an LSI 360-degree feedback, whether it's, an anonymous inbox, embrace the feedback. Ask, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? What would you like me to do better? Are you seeing enough of me? Are you clear enough on where we're headed? Don't be afraid to ask for feedback. It's not about being insecure and saying, hey, do you guys think I'm doing a good job? It's about saying, how do I get better? My job is to continually improve. So that would be a really important part of what I would advise people. And one of the other values that we have at Pacific National now is curiosity, and it lines up very nicely with that because there's a common trait amongst all of the great leaders in the world, and that is they've never lost their curiosity.
Yeah.
There's always a different way to do things. It's always better, or it might not be better, but it might be more appropriate for the times. It might be, reading the play a bit better. So that's really important. So that's what I would say is something to embrace, is that curiosity. There's a great saying that someone said to me many years ago about why it's important to never stop learning. And the saying went something like this, if I can remember it, but it said, learners shall inherit the earth, while the learned are well equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists.
Oh, okay. I like that one.
Yeah. So if you think you've learned everything,
you
only know what's happened to date. You forget about learning what's evolving. And so, as I say, you're only equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists.
Okay, I'm gonna do some research on that. I really like that because I'm a big fan of growth mindset, and I do sometimes have leaders, and this comes back to the last question I'm going to ask you about how you develop as a leader. We run so many leadership programs, and sometimes I do have people that come into my leadership programs or coaching, and they go, "But I already know. Why do I need to keep learning about this, or why do I need to learn leadership?" And I think you need to keep learning. Like that is if you can keep learning and keep that growth mindset, it'll just serve you so well in your life. Anyway, so finally, so how have you developed, or how do you develop yourself as a leader? I know you love to read books, and I am going to say I have written about Paul in my last book I wrote around First Comes Courage, a great story around Paul. But and I know he's an avid reader, but how else have you developed?
So I think the curiosity factor is something that I would recommend everyone make a deliberate effort to never lose it. Never lose it. Never stop being curious. One of the ways that you stop being curious is you think that you've been put into a job because you know everything and you must have all the answers, and then you actually don't want to necessarily admit that you don't, so you shut down curious discussions. Always think there's a different perspective. What does that person think? Let's take input. Is there a different way I can do it? Never stop being curious. There's no doubt that experience helps you develop, and that experience, I'd say, to pay attention to all of the examples you're given, good and bad, and be very deliberate about how you shape yourself around the good and try and avoid the bad. Reading is very important. Never ever stop reading. I think that is I'd say the key to this is making sure that if you have the intention to become an excellent leader, if you truly desire to be respected, and that's more important than popularity, by the way, if you truly desire to be respected by your team, who will go that extra mile for you, What is it that you have to do to get there? Continually learn, and you state that intention. That intention is not enough.
Yeah.
Buying a gym membership is an intention, but it doesn't make you fit. It's the going regularly that does. So it's actually building that discipline into your life to say, if I want to be a good leader, it isn't a sugar hit of a 2-day leadership program in a January. It's what I learn out of that program that I take into my daily life. Yeah. And so that's the big mistake a lot of people make. Most people know what a good leader looks like. That's not the problem. It's about building the discipline to become the good leader into your day-to-day life.
So true. It's about action. It's about action. So thank you so much. That was fantastic today. What a great interview. Lots of really great questions. Here someone's mentioned effective leaders bring out the best in people by stimulating them to achieve what they thought was impossible. So thank you for that. So thank you so much for the conversation and your great insights. As you know, in the leadership space, I cannot wait to see you speak at our leadership awards next year in Melbourne. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And the nominations are coming in. There's so many great nominations. It's free to nominate anyone that's watching or listening. So I just wanted to say thank you so much again for your great insights and great leadership, Paul. It's been fantastic to connect with you today.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Sonia. Thanks to everyone for listening in as well. I thoroughly enjoy sharing whatever experience I've learned. Hopefully it's made a little bit of a difference to the people watching. And if so, it's been worthwhile.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for everyone listening and watching today. And remember to always stay kind and stay courageous. Thank you again. Take care.
Thanks, Sonia.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast Leadership with Sonia. Find out more about Sonia, her work, and more podcasts at soniamcdonald.com.au and reach out to her and her fabulous team to learn more.